Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker in Washington on day one of the first full government shutdown in more than a decade, with no clear path in Congress to end it. Closed signs were seen around the Capitol as the shutdown took effect, with essential federal employees now working without pay. An estimated 750,000 federal employees are being temporarily furloughed as the White House threatens mass layoffs starting as early as tomorrow. Here's Vice President J.D. Vance during a surprise appearance at today's White House briefing.
If this thing drags on for another few days or, God forbid, another few weeks, we are going to have to lay people off. We're going to have to save money in some places so that essential services don't get turned off in other places. That is the reality of the government shutdown that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats have foisted upon the administration.
Today, a revote on the House-passed stopgap funding bill to reopen the government failed, but some cracks have appeared in the Democratic caucus, with 3 senators defecting and joining Republicans in voting for the bill. But it came up short of the necessary 60 votes. And with little progress, the blame game on Capitol Hill is intensifying. So is the White House, threatening to make this shutdown as painful as possible for Democrats. Here's Speaker of the House Mike Johnson and Senate Majority Leader John Thune today.
The simple truth is Democrats in Congress have dragged our country into another reckless shutdown to satisfy their far-left base. There's nothing to negotiate. There's nothing that we can pull out of this bill to make it any leaner or cleaner than it is.
There's no way out, folks. There's no way out. This could have been avoided. It's totally unavoidable. And everybody's now asking the question, how does this end? Well, it ends when the Senate Democrats pick this bill up, passed by the House of Representatives, and vote for it.
Meanwhile, Democrats are pointing the finger at Republicans and focusing on demands to restore health care subsidies.
Republicans tried to bully us, and it's clear they can't. They don't have the votes.
We will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of everyday Americans.
Speaker Johnson calling the demands on ACA subsidies a, quote, red herring, as the White House continues to push claims that Democrats want those subsidies to go to undocumented immigrants, even though current law prohibits that. And the Democratic Party's legislation would not change that.
To the American people who are watching, the reason your government is shut down at this very minute is because, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of congressional Republicans and even a few moderate Democrats supported opening the government, the Chuck Schumer AOC wing of the Democratic Party shut down the government because they said to us, we will open the government, but only if you give billions of dollars of funding for health care for illegal aliens. That's a ridiculous proposition.
All of it comes as the White House seeks to dramatically ramp up pressure on Democrats after President Trump suggested his administration could make, quote, irreversible cuts during a shutdown.
So the last thing we want to do is shut it down, but a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things.
And today, perhaps the first tangible example of that pledge, as the Office of Management and Budget said it was freezing $18 billion in New York City infrastructure funding. The home city of Senate and House Minority Leaders Senator Chuck Schumer and Representative Hakeem Jeffries. And joining me now to start us off is senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez and Julie Tsirkin, live on Capitol Hill. Gabe, let me start with you today. A lot of action at the White House there today. Clearly, they are trying to lead the messaging battle here. Vice President J.D. Vance with that surprise appearance in the briefing room. Take me behind the scenes to your conversations. What's the strategy?
Well, Kristen, it is an all-out messaging battle. As you saw, it was a surprise appearance by Vice President J.D. Vance in the briefing room. But we have been hearing over the last several days from White House officials who really feel that they have the wind at their backs here. They feel they can win this messaging battle, and they're going to try to take their case to the American people. That is the Democrats' fault for not voting for what they call this clean, continuing resolution. And to do that, Kristen, here at the briefing room, they're playing Democrats on a loop, a montage of certain Democrats over the years complaining about Republicans heading into a government shutdown. And so they're hoping that by using Democrats' own words against them, that they will be able to make their case and that the Democrats will eventually shoulder the blame here. And they're also trying to brand this over and over again as the Schumer shutdown.
And is the vice president going to be taking the lead here, Gabe, on all of the messaging? Do they see him as the front person on this?
Well, certainly. Look, he has congressional experience. He was in the Senate for a number of years. Earlier this week, he was front and center speaking to reporters after that high-stakes meeting with congressional Democrats in the Oval Office. And today, the vice president making clear and, pointing out that you played a clip from him talking about the Schumer AOC wing of the Democratic Party. But just a short time after that, he talked about how he thought that it was Chuck Schumer that was worried about not putting up enough of a fight because he feared a primary challenge from AOC. So they're really going hard after the motivation that Democrats that they feel have for this shutdown. And again, they feel that they're going to win the messaging battle in the end, Kristen.
And Gabe, before I head over to Julie on Capitol Hill, let's talk about the federal workers caught in the middle of all of this. Tens of thousands of them will be furloughed. That is traditionally what we would see during a shutdown, meaning they will work without pay. But in this case, the White House is threatening to actually permanently lay off, fire some of these workers. They're using that to try to pressure Democrats. Who will be affected? When are those layoffs going to start, Gabe?
Hey, look, the budget director told the congressional Republicans today that these layoffs could happen the next 1 to 2 days. The White House press secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed that they would happen imminently, but you did hear from the vice president today saying that on the chopping block would be some of these programs whose funding dried up on October 1st and that are not consistent with the president's policies. So you played the president yesterday saying that some of these programs that Democrats like could be on the chopping block. What the White House clearly wanting to make this as painful as possible. And the vice president also saying today that their intention right now is that they're negotiating directly with some of these moderate Democrats that they hope to pick off, essentially cutting out Democratic leadership out of the negotiations, Kristen.
Well, Gabe, that takes me perfectly over to Julie on Capitol Hill. Let's talk about those defections that we've seen so far, Julie. Two Senate Democrats, one independent overnight, changing their vote from no to yes on the Republican legislation. What are you hearing about that? How concerned are Democrats about keeping their caucus together?
Leader Schumer was asked about that, Kristen, yesterday after the second round of voting failed on those plans to keep the government open hours before that midnight shutdown deadline. And he essentially said he's not worried about it, that the Democratic Party is unified. They are convinced that they can keep Democrats together on these votes. The problem is, though, and I talked to Leader Thune about this, Republicans are going to make this as painful as possible for Democrats. Already today, you saw cracks emerging not only on the Democratic side, Republicans again forcing another vote to keep the government open. Those same two Democrats and independent in Angus King that caucuses with Democrats were the only votes on that side of the aisle. But it shows you Republicans are not done trying on this issue. And that brings me to a huddle that you see on your screen that happened several hours ago between Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. I talked to some of them afterwards. Take a listen to what that was all about.
Just a lot of people would really like to find a path forward, and everybody's got different ideas about what will work. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding that we're divided on the ACA issues. We're not. It's a matter of moving forward to eliminate the fraud.
At this point, I'm not going to talk about the specifics, except to say there are real and significant glimmers of hope that we can have a meeting of the minds.
A meeting of the minds, Kristen, maybe among rank and file members, but so far leaders in the parties, I just came off of a press conference that Leader Jeffries held on the other side of the Capitol, they are sticking to their positions. It's either for Democrats that they work with Republicans right now to negotiate those Affordable Care Act subsidies and other health care provisions and keep the government open, or it stays closed. But again, this is a political loser for everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on.
Well, and Julie, help us to understand one of the big issues at the center of this, because Democrats have said that what they are fighting for is an extension of the health care, the Obamacare subsidies that are going to expire at the end of the year. Open enrollment starts November 1st. And Republicans are accusing Democrats of trying to give health care to undocumented immigrants. Democrats say that's not what they are doing. What is the actual fact check on this, Julie? Help us to understand it.
Yeah, Kristen, the bottom line here is that it is against federal law right now to give the Affordable Care Act or have those subsidies applicable to undocumented immigrants. The catch here is that Democrats are trying to restore some health care cuts instituted by Republicans and signed into law by President Trump earlier this summer. And in some cases, in some states, DACA recipients, children of people who came here years ago and have been here, people who pay taxes, people who are known to the government, in some cases, yes, they do receive health care benefits. And so that is why you hear Republicans framing this as an issue of Democrats trying to give illegals, in their words, this access to health care. The other piece of this is when you take the Affordable Care Act subsidies, for example, and how Leader Thune framed it to me, Democrats, through the Inflation Reduction Act during COVID, beefed up those subsidies, extending and expanding them. And that is the fundamental issue and disagreement on policy that Republicans have with Democrats. When you talk about that huddle, for example, Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota, who I'll notice is the partner senator to the majority leader, John Thune, also from South Dakota, he's saying we are not on the different pages about the ACA. They have constituents that really rely on them, especially in rural areas. What they are on different pages about is reforming that program or simply making it permanent. And I think that is a discussion that is going to take far longer than just a month or two to solve, especially when there are so many political differences up here, as you well know.
Yeah, just fascinating to see that huddle, though, Julie. Clearly a sign there's a group of lawmakers who are trying to potentially move beyond this stalemate. Thank you so much for your great reporting from Capitol Hill. Gabe, before I let you go, I have to ask you one more quick question. Different topic. President Trump, we know, pulled his nominee for the Bureau of Labor Statistics commissioner. That, of course, comes after the president fired its previous commissioner. So who's going to head up BLS next? What's behind this?
Well, that is a big question at this point, Kristen. It was a bit of a surprise last night when this was announced that E.J. Antony would be withdrawn as the Trump administration's nominee for BLS commissioner. You'll recall it was just a few weeks ago that over controversy over the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers, the Trump administration didn't agree with them and essentially forced that BLS commissioner out. We just heard from the White House. They look forward to nominating soon. Unclear exactly when, but to bring this full circle, Kristen, it's this shutdown will affect the release of economic data. So a lot of questions on that front. We understand that it was because the nominee just didn't have the votes.
Okay, well, one angle we'll be watching very closely. And as you say, the shutdown has implications for the data coming from BLS as well. Gabe, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Staying on the shutdown now. Joining me now in studio is Pennsylvania Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be with you.
Thanks for being here in person. So let's start off with the state of play. You see those lawmakers huddling there, but no signs of any progress as far as I can tell. What is the off-ramp here, Congresswoman? How long do you expect this to last?
I have no idea, so I don't want to pretend I do. I'm happy to see any time there are conversations taking place across the aisle, including Republicans, Democrats, Independents, as you just saw. That says that there's a seriousness to this. We should not be in a government shutdown. We should never have gotten here. And Speaker Johnson should never have sent his caucus home. Knowing that yesterday was the deadline, midnight yesterday. We were doomed to a shutdown because of failed leadership.
Well, let me ask you, because, of course, there's going to be plenty of finger pointing going around. Democrats are saying we want any funding bill to also expand subsidies for Obamacare, for the ACA, which are set to expire at the end of the year. What are you willing to compromise on? Is that a hard and fast for you, that you will not sign anything that includes an extension of ACA? Would you sign something, for example, that said, we agree to start negotiating on X date?
Well, I'm not going to be the negotiator here on TV. I wish there were negotiations going on. I wish there were conversations. You saw the only time that the president actually sat down with leadership, Republican and Democrat, was Monday before this shutdown. And so absurd that that is the way that it happened. So the Republicans have been very irresponsible. Back home, my constituents are very upset. This is a health care crisis of Republican making. And let's be honest, this has been going on for years. This has been in the making for years. They have wanted to defund Obamacare for 15 years. And this is their backdoor shutdown, Republican shutdown way of doing it. It's complicated, but it's not. They want to hurt Americans' health care.
What do you say, though, to the argument that Republicans are making, which is that Democrats are basically using this as a pawn, holding the government hostage while you try to negotiate your priorities instead of signing a clean funding bill and negotiating over these health care subsidies in some point before they expire, which is the end of the year?
It's much simpler than that. Republicans have the White House, the House, and the Senate. They're failing to govern. If these are their priorities, and we can see it is, they want to take health care away from millions of Americans, tens of thousands of my constituents in suburban Philadelphia, then they got to govern. They got to find the votes, build these policies. Notice how they don't want to talk about health care. They're acting as though this is procedural or something extraneous, as the speaker said. This is not extraneous. This is central to people's lives. This is health care. This is SNAP, for crying out loud. Nutritional benefits. This is WIC. Starting today in Pennsylvania, there's going to be limited funding to apply for WIC. That's Women and Infants Nutrition. This is a cruel, very cynical set of things to do. I do want to point out something that you just asked the question about, which is the misinformation, the disinformation, the lies of the Republican Party, saying that Democrats just want to give health care to undocumented people, or as they call them, illegal aliens. I don't care for that word, alien. And I know it is in statute. But I brought a couple samples of where over and over again it says that if an individual is not a citizen or a national of the United States or an alien lawfully present in the United States, such individual shall not be eligible for coverage. They're lying.
Well, and you're right. That is one of the big points that we continue to hear from Republicans. I want to get your reaction to some of the cracks we've seen in the Democratic Party as it relates to standing firm with this strategy. Let's take a look at what John Fetterman had to say about why he voted in favor of the Republican funding bill. He says, I voted aye to extend ACA tax credits because I support them, but I won't vote for the chaos of shuttering our government. Here is Independent Angus King saying, by shutting the government, we're actually giving Donald Trump more power. Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada saying, we need a bipartisan solution to address this impending health care crisis, but we should not be swapping the pain of one group of Americans for another. Are your fellow Democrats wrong there, Congresswoman?
Well, I think about John Fetterman, for example. He and I are buddies. We actually ran against each other, got to know each other in a lieutenant governor's race in 2018 before I had the chance to run for Congress, and he did succeed in becoming lieutenant governor. I put a call into him yesterday. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity to speak to him, but I just wanted to tell him what I was feeling and seeing from across the Capitol, but also across my constituents and my district. What I believe is the government is already, before midnight of last night, we were already in a dramatic shutdown as a result of the chaotic policies of this administration. More than 200,000 federal workers before the shutdown lost their jobs. And we know what they want to do now. They actually want to fire more. We're already in a shutdown. Take a look at what they're doing to SAMHSA, what they're doing to the U.S. Department of Education, what they're doing to FBI, USAID. Shutdown, shutdown, shutdown.
What about this argument, though, by, for example, Senator Cortez Masto, who says we should not be swapping the pain of one group of Americans for another? The fact that this is going to impact people all across this country, including, it seems like, thousands of federal workers who could be laid off.
This is pain across the United States, absolutely. It's also pain across the globe in terms of our failed leadership. So I understand that argument. I honor how these folks voted. But I'll tell you what, I won't be complicit with what this administration is doing. What the Speaker of the House did, which was to send people home so that more people could from the roles of SNAP and from health care. I had the opportunity to speak to him last night about this very thing hours before the shutdown. And I asked him, I implored him, be honest with the American people. This is not a so-called clean CR. This is just another way of cutting the ACA. Some of the estimates you've seen from economists, it will be a 70% cut in health care across the board for Americans. These are working class Americans. We're telling the stories of folks who have, one woman was with us yesterday. She has 13-year-old twins who are profoundly autistic, and she talked about their beauty and their destiny and their dignity and what she will not be able to do with them for their future without Medicaid.
Well, let me ask you, the Washington Post op-ed argues that Democrats have walked into a shutdown trap. Let me read you a little bit of what this op-ed says. It says, progressives embrace the same disastrous mentality that led the House Freedom Caucus to believe it could come out ahead in previous government funding standoffs. They wrongly assumed their political leverage would withstand the ensuing fallout. Do Democrats risk having significant political fallout here, coming up short, not getting the ACA extensions, and having to ultimately vote to refund the government?
Let me suggest to you that I've never been prouder of the Democratic caucus, and I've been proud of the Democratic caucus since I got here in 2019, which happened to be the longest government shutdown in history under Mr. Trump 1.0. We are so unified, and we're not standing at risk. We're standing on the side of the American people. We're standing on the side of their nutrition, their health care, their access to health care, and their access to health.
Well, that shutdown you referenced in 2019 was the longest in history, more than 30 days. How long are you willing to let the government stay shut down, Congresswoman? Longer than that?
I'm hoping it is nowhere near as long as that, and that was under the auspices of the President of the United States, Donald Trump.
Are you prepared, though, to fight for days, weeks, months, even if necessary?
I know I'm prepared to fight. I know our caucus is prepared to fight, but I will not get ahead of the negotiations. I hope at some point the Speaker actually brings his folks back to town and says, we actually have to do right by the American people. And it's time for us to tell the truth. One of the things I implored the Speaker last night was to say, you have to be more honest with the American people. Our civic responsibility is to tell citizens the truth. So to lie to citizens and say that this is a clean CR, nonsense, he knows it.
Congresswoman Dean, thank you so much for being here in person.
Good to be with you.
Really appreciate your perspective.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.